Isn't a life of passion really what we all want to aspire to have, to live for? Life of passion, life of passion, life of passion. Life of passion, the one that we should all
These are the kind of questions that I have. These are the kind of questions that I have. These are the kind of questions that I have. These are the kind of questions that I have.
Deprogramming takes months. Deprogramming takes months.
These are the kind of questions that I have.
Deprogramming takes months.
These are the kind of questions that I have.
Deprogramming takes months.
9 leaders of Arab and Muslim American community groups have rejected a meeting with White House officials. They say they're taking a stand in response to US policies on Gaza and have criticized President Joe Biden's support of Israel. The meeting was scheduled in Chicago for Thursday. So joining us live from Chicago is Tarek Khalil. He's an attorney, activist and board member in the Chicago chapter of American Muslims for Palestine. Tarek, welcome to Al Jazeera. So you were invited to this Biden meeting, this White House meeting, and you declined. Why did you do so?
A host of organizations were invited, AIM Chicago being one of them. Our rejection and opposition to this meeting is laid out in our letter that I helped spearhead, and the basic undertone and the basic message is fairly simple. We met multiple times, there's been many meetings, and the demands have been made abundantly clear to this administration time and time again. And the Biden administration has rejected those calls, has rejected those demands. So now Biden administration reached out to meet to discuss what exactly? There is no meeting of the minds, so why meet? You know exactly what the demands are. You know what is happening on the ground. There's no new information. There's not a single piece of information that I can provide, that we can provide to the Biden administration that they don't already know.
Don't you think this would have been a good opportunity to air your grievances on what would have been a public platform, or do you think it would have just been used by the administration as a photo op?
Well, the demands that have been made time and time again is essentially would have been the same demands that would have been made at that meeting. So why do we keep regurgitating the same talking points, the same demands, when the administration is obviously not responding to it? Now, any type of measure that the administration takes to quote unquote try to alleviate the situation or increase humanitarian aid, the Biden administration can end this right now with one phone call. That's all it takes. One phone call. We provide Israel with US made weapons. We provide Israel with financial aid. We're the ones that protect Israel at the United Nations. We provide diplomatic cover. So Biden can end all of this in 1 hour if he truly wanted to. So you want to schedule another meeting with local leaders in the Chicagoland area to discuss what exactly? The very thing that we've been demanding all along, which is a permanent and immediate ceasefire. So you want to meet? Fine. We will condition a meeting on the call for a ceasefire, not have another meeting to demand it again.
If you don't meet President Biden and White House officials, what weight can these American Muslim groups bring to bear on the administration and their position on Gaza, which does seem to be shifting a bit, doesn't it, diplomatically?
Well, I mean, because of the immense pressure that has been put on the administration, but that doesn't mean that there's a moral calculus here. The political calculus is, okay, maybe we need to provide some kind of trickling of aid, which is what this temporary mechanism, this temporary report is essentially for. It's to showcase to the world and to the American people that, hey, you know, we're doing something about it, but you could do something much greater than that and in a quicker time frame. This report will take about 60 to 90 days to put together to facilitate aid while you're providing that the same entity that's committing a genocide in Gaza with more weapons. So you want to play the role of firefighter as well as arsonist at the same time. That contradictory policy will not fly with the leadership here in Chicago.
The administration has not been entirely one way on this. The Vice President Kamala Harris has been calling for a ceasefire.
Okay, well, let's take a look at her words. She called for a temporary ceasefire. And a temporary ceasefire means, hey, let's bring back the, let's make this a focus on the hostages as opposed to the destruction and the slaughter of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Ceasefire so that we can fulfill one aspect of it, and then Israel can resume its bombing campaign and its genocidal acts after that. It was never a call for a permanent and immediate ceasefire. That's been the call, that's been the demand for 5+ months. And the Biden administration can't effectuate that with one simple phone call, and he refuses to do so. So meet for what? It's counterintuitive, it's counterproductive, and I view it as a net negative, and we as a community, as a leadership community, as a collective, view it as a net negative as opposed to a net positive.
What do you make of the U.S. efforts to get aid into Gaza?
It's just another cynical move. Aid, so you want to provide the people of Gaza Band-Aids while also carrying an axe in the other hand. That kind of contradictory policy, we see right through it. So all the while, you provide Israel with the necessary means with US-made weapons to commit a genocide, the first live-streamed genocide in the history of the world. And at the same time, you want to trickle down aid as well. So you want to heal the wounds, but cause greater wounds at the same time. That kind of policy is not based on any kind of moralistic grounding. That's not based on a principled stance. That's based on some type of political expediency and political posturing. And we as a leadership community are not falling for it.
Tariq Khalil from the Chicago chapter of American Muslims for Palestine. Thank you.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israeli forces killed at least 29 people in Gaza on Thursday in 2 separate attacks as they waited for humanitarian aid. The latest massacre struck Palestinians in northern Gaza City and at the Al-Nusrat camp in central Gaza.
Today, with no warning, they attacked this warehouse. Though this center is empty of militants or security guards or police even that may threaten Israel's security, we got the aid and we distribute to people. The people need to come and get their Ramadan meals. Today, they hit the warehouse and burnt all the aid, including the dates. Also, the blood of the people who work here fill the place.
Even before yesterday's massacre, Gazan officials reported Israeli forces have killed more than 400 Palestinians as they wait for aid deliveries. Hamas has reportedly proposed a ceasefire deal, which includes the release of hostages in exchange for 700 to 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza, and the return of forcibly displaced Palestinians to their homes. Elsewhere, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas appointed longtime economic advisor Mohammed Mustafa as the Palestinian Authority's new prime minister Thursday. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer offered his most scathing condemnation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right government, calling for new elections in Israel. He spoke from the Senate floor.
If Prime Minister Netanyahu's current coalition remains in power after the war begins to wind down and continues to pursue dangerous and inflammatory policies that test existing U.S. standards for assistance, then the United States will have no choice but to play a more active role in shaping Israeli policy by using our leverage to change the present course.
Senator Schumer is a staunch defender of Israel and the highest-ranking elected Jewish American lawmaker. Meanwhile, the Biden administration imposed sanctions on 2 Israeli settler outposts and 3 individual settlers on the occupied West Bank who have harassed and attacked Palestinians. In South Africa, Naledi Pandor, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, warned South African citizens they will face prosecution if they serve in the Israeli military as it commits war crimes in Gaza. Pandor said, "When you come home, we're going to arrest you." Here in New York, over 100 activists were arrested Thursday after occupying the lobby of the New York Times in the latest protest against the paper's coverage of Israel's war on Gaza. One man was filmed harassing a group of protesters and ripping away a banner that read "Lies." This came just hours after a separate early morning protest, which blocked trucks from accessing and picking up newspapers at the Times printing facility in Queens. Some of the demonstrators laid out a pile of rubble on the road and placed a sign that read, "Consent for genocide is manufactured here," unquote. In Canada, a growing list of over 1,000 alumni, faculty, staff, and others from Montreal's McGill University signed an open letter in solidarity with students on hunger strike to demand McGill divest from companies arming Israel and impose an academic boycott on Israel over its genocide in Gaza and occupation of Palestinian land. This is hunger striker Shadi explaining why they joined the peaceful action despite facing personal health challenges.
I see and hear about all the people in Gaza who are disabled and chronically ill, and they don't get to opt out of the starvation, of the bombs, and of the genocide. I think of Yazan al-Kafarna, who was starved by the IOF, right? And I think of Gaza's Deaf Children's Center that got destroyed a few days ago. And I don't think I can sit this one out.
In more protest news, prominent writers, including Naomi Klein, Michelle Alexander, Hisham Attar, Isabella Hamad, and Zaina Arafat, announced they will not participate in this year's PEN World Voices Festival for failing to appropriately respond, they said, to Israel's, quote, cultural genocide in Gaza. The authors write, quote, Israel's killed nearly 100 academics and writers. If organizations like PEN America cling to the illusion of political neutrality in the face of a clear effort to destroy Palestinian lives and culture, one can only wonder whether there will be any writers left in Gaza to tell the story of their apocalypse or to trust words and speech when the killing finally ends, or any record left of the history they've lived, they wrote. At least 60 people, including children, are feared dead in the Mediterranean Sea after departing Libya on a migrant vessel that went adrift en route to Europe. The engine reportedly broke down, leaving the group lost at sea for days without food and water. Several others were rescued, many of them from Senegal, Mali, and Gambia. The humanitarian aid group SOS Méditerranée said it had rescued another 200 migrants headed to Europe on a wooden boat and an overcrowded rubber dinghy. According to the International Organization for Migration, 2,500 migrants died or went missing in the Mediterranean last year as they attempted to reach Europe. 200 deaths have been recorded since the start of this year. In Washington state, the immigrant rights group La Resistencia is reporting over 300 people have joined a hunger strike following the recent death of Charles Leo Daniel, a 61-year-old man from Trinidad and Tobago, and reports of several suicide attempts at the troubled Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma. Activists have set up an encampment outside the jail as they and detained immigrants participate in the peaceful action, demanding Northwest be shut down. They're also calling for an independent investigation into Daniel's death, who was found unresponsive while being held in solitary confinement earlier this month. Northwest is run by the private company Geo Group. To see our recent interview with La Resistencia's Marumoto Villalpando, who's herself on hunger strike, go to democracynow.org. Vice President Kamala Harris visited a Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Paul, Minnesota Thursday, in the first such official visit by a president or vice president. The visit was part of Harris's Fight for Reproductive Freedoms tour as the Biden campaign seeks to capitalize on voter anger over the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade. This is Vice President Harris.
The stories abound. I've heard stories of and have met with women who had miscarriages in toilets. Women who were being denied emergency care because the healthcare providers there at an emergency room were afraid that because of the laws in their state that they could be criminalized, sent to prison for providing health care.
We'll have more on Vice President Harris's visit after headlines. In Michigan, a jury found James Crumbly guilty of involuntary manslaughter for failing to prevent his teenage son from going on a shooting spree which killed 4 students at Oxford High in 2021. James Crumbly's wife, Jennifer, was convicted on the same charges last month after prosecutors successfully argued the couple ignored obvious warning signs and bought the gun for their son. It's the first time parents have been directly charged for deaths caused by their child in a mass shooting. They'll both be sentenced next month. In California, authorities have released body cam footage showing the moments before deputies shot and killed 15-year-old Ryan Gaynor, a black child with autism, holding a gardening tool at the time. Video of the second deputy to arrive shows just 8.5 seconds pass from when he exited his vehicle to when he shot the teen. Distraught family members can be heard asking, "Why did you shoot my baby? And where is your taser?" The family's lawyer said at least 2 of the officers on the scene were familiar with Ryan Gaynor and would have known he did not pose a threat. And Senator Bernie Sanders has introduced legislation calling for a 32-hour work week. Sanders said the proposal is not a radical idea and has countries and companies around the world increasingly adopt shorter work weeks and record the same, or in many cases, higher rates of productivity. Sanders said technological advances have benefited corporations and CEOs while leaving out workers, and that AI threatens to further deepen this inequality. On Thursday, a Senate panel held a hearing on the issue. This is UAW President Shawn Fain, who pushed for a 32-hour work week in his union's initial contract demands to the big 3 automakers last fall.
But time, just like every precious resource in our society, is not freely given to the working class. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've seen productivity in our society skyrocket. With the advance of technology, 1 worker is now doing what 12 workers used to do. More profit is being squeezed out of every hour, every minute, and every second. Who's going to act to fix this epidemic of lives dominated by work? Are the employers going to act? Will Congress act? You know, how can working class peoples take back their lives and take back their time?
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.